So 1.3 is to write expressions. So this one is kind of like they're giving you things in words, and then you have to like write what it would be with like numbers and symbols. So some helpful like phrases to look for to know what to do in translating verbal phrases. So I'm going to list it off. I'm going to do like a little chart here. So I'm going to do the operation that's being done and like a little bit about it. I'm going to do a verbal phrase for what you would see like written out. And then the last thing is I'll actually give you an expression example of it. So let me see. Okay. So the first one is going to be addition. And this is the sum. It says plus, total, more than, or increased by. So if you see any of these words, it means to add. And so I actually have two examples of this. So the first one could be the sum of 2 and a number x. And I'll go over and go ahead and write the expression. So it says the sum of 2 and a number x. So what that means is just add them together. So that would be something like 2 plus x. And then another example of that could be if it says a number n plus 7. So if you see that, that means something like n plus 7, actually written out like that. So those are some key phrases or things to look for if we're talking about addition. And it just means to add them together. The next one is going to be subtraction. So this would be if you see the words difference, less than, minus, or decreased by. Okay, so if you see any of those words, think subtraction. And so again, I have kind of two ways that you could see this written, and obviously there's others, but one example is the difference of a number n and 6. So if it says the difference of a number n and 6, obviously you see the word difference, that should make you think subtraction. Order does matter, so we're always going to go in the order that it's read across, so it's going to be n minus 6 for this one. And then another kind of more obvious way you might see it written is a number y minus 5. And so then that would just be something like y and then a minus sign and 5. So then the next one's going to be multiplication. So some keywords to look for to indicate that you're doing multiplication would be times, product, multiplied by, or the word of. Which that one probably sounds a little weird, so I'll actually show you an example what that looks like. So a phrase, the first one would be something like 12 times the number y. And so if you see that, it would just be 12 and a y. Okay, and if you have a number and a variable touching, I think you've probably seen this before, but that just means multiplication. You could also write it as like 12 with a dot between it and then a y. So if you had like two numbers, like if it said 12 times 72, then you would need to use the dot instead there. And then an example using of, since that one's kind of a weird one, something like 1/3 of a number x. And all that means is 1/3 times x, like that. And then the last one is going to be division. And there's only one example of this one, but the words that should make you think division are quotient, divided by, or divided into. So an example of that, like I said, there's only one of these, but the quotient of a number k and 2. So again, we would go left to right in how we read it, and when we write it, we would write it as top over bottom, so we would write it as k over 2. You may also see it as k and then the division symbol too, which just means k divided by 2 as well. And sometimes you might see some of these things combined, where they might include multiple of these, and so again it goes in order. And so something like that, there's in the guided practice, there's an example of that, so I'll just do that one really quick for us to talk about. But if you see something like the quotient when the quantity 10 plus a number x is divided by 2. Okay, so if we see that, that's telling us that what we're going to do first is we're going to have 10 plus a number x, those things go together, okay, and then all of that is being divided by 2. So what that's going to look like is 10 plus a number x, so plus x, and then is divided by 2, so then we'll write that whole thing over 2, and that's what it would look like. So pretty much all the problems in this section are going to have just stuff like that, where you have to write those like that. And then I'll go ahead and do a couple other note things, and then we'll start working some actual examples just to get all the notes out of the way. A definition, we have a verbal model, and so basically all that is it's taking the stuff that we just talked about and these like little things that we looked at of like 12 times the number y and putting a real life application to them. And so these describe a real world situation using words and labels, or using words as labels. And using math symbols to relate the words. And then basically you'll then take the verbal model that you're given and write a mathematical model that goes with it. So something like this would be if you worked at, let's say, Starbucks, and all of you that are working that night, so let's say that, well, let's just say all of us in here work at Starbucks. So there's 3 of us. And so then something like at the end of the night, you add up all the tips, and then it is divided by the number of workers there. So if there was $27 in the tip jar, then there's 3 of us, you would say 27 divided by 3 equals 9. So we'd each get $9. So that's just kind of like just a quick like what that's going to look like. But obviously we'll run through a bunch of examples, but I always like to kind of know what I'm getting into before I do it. So one other thing that they cover in this section are rates. And so a rate is a fraction that compares 2 quantities measured in different units. So this would be something like you're in your car and you're driving down the street and you see those white signs on the side of the road, and they say the speed limit is 45 what? Do you know what MPH stands for? It stands for miles per hour.
And I'm a designated math person. I should know that.
Okay, so that would be a rate. Okay, so on the road you would see that as something like MPH, okay, meaning miles per hour. In math, we would write it as miles over an hour. So miles per hour. So that's another one. I probably should have added to division. If you see the word per, more so when that's really small, when you're doing rates, but that's going to indicate that you're doing a rate. Okay. And then, like, in your car, like, when you go to put gas in your car, there's the same thing. If you want to figure out how many miles to the gallon that you got, you're going to look at your miles that you drove, and you're going to divide it by the number of gallons that it took to fill up your car, and you would get it in miles per gallon. So that would be another rate. Those are two pretty common rates that we deal with. But anyways, we'll look at that in a little bit. So let's go ahead and look at a few examples here. So let's start with number 4. So these ones say to translate the verbal phrase into an expression. When you go to do your homework, if you don't want to copy over the phrase, just because it's going to end up being a lot of writing, you don't have to. Normally I like you to copy over the problem. It's good when you go back to like study and stuff if you have it, but I know it's a lot of writing, so don't necessarily feel like you have to if you don't want to. So 4 says the product of 6 and a number y. So which of our 4, what is the word I'm looking for? Operations am I using in this one? And what word tells you that?
Multiplication.
Okay, and what word gave that away to you?
Product.
Okay, so we see product, meaning we're going to be dealing with multiplication. So what would that be? What would we be writing then?
6 times y.
Yep. So 6 and a y. Let's see, number 6. 50 divided by a number h. So which operation are we using here and what gives it away?
Divided by division.
Yep. And so what would we have here then? Or what would our written in like numbers and letters be rather than words?
50 divided by 8.
Okay. Yep. So we could do it as 50 and the fraction bar h, or you can also do it 50 divided by h. Either way would be fine. All right, so this next one, we have number 8, the sum of 15 and a number x. So which operation am I using here and what word tells you that?
Addition.
And what word gives it to you?
Sum.
Yep. So what would we get then?
15 plus x.
15 plus x. Yep. All right. Let's see. I have a bug bite on my arm. It itches. Number 10. All right. This one's gonna add in another step with it. It's a little different than these other ones that we've seen so far. So this one is 3 less than the square of a number p. So what do you notice about this one?
It has 2 operations.
Okay, so what 2 operations do we have?
Less than.
Which symbolizes what?
Minus.
Okay, so I'm going to put a minus sign there. And then what else?
Square.
So what does that mean I'm going to do? It wasn't one we wrote down. This one's a little bit different.
Is it adding the 3 over p?
So think back to,
Exponent?
yes, Okay, so it's going to be exponent. So we've been saying like p raised to the 2. Another way we can say that is p squared. So if you see squared, that means raise it to the second power. So this that was weird. Undo. So if you see that, that's going to tell you to raise it to the second power. Okay, if you do the little caret, that just indicates that it's being raised to the second power. So that's why I'm writing it like that. So 3 less than the number p. So in this case, than p squared. What we're actually doing is we're going to flip it because it says 3 less than. So that means we take whatever number we had and we subtract the 3 from that. So what we're going to have in this case is p squared minus 3 because it's 3 less than whatever that value was. And then the last one of this type, number 12, we have 5 more than 3 times a number w. So what do we notice about this one? More than. So what does that mean? Addition. And what else do we notice about this one?
3 times.
So what does that mean?
Multiplication.
Okay. So 5 more than 3 times the number w. So how do you think I would write this one?
5 plus 3 times w.
Yep. 5 plus 3 times w. And if you had written it as 3w plus 5, that would also be okay. Those both mean the same thing. So. All right, let's look at some of the writing and expression for the situation. So these are going to be these verbal model problems here. So number 16, I'm going to go ahead and write it out while we're doing these examples. But again, if you don't want to write out the whole thing when you go to do your homework, that's completely fine. So this one is the number of pages of a 5-page article left to read if you've read P pages. So these ones aren't always going to be as nice and tell you that, you know, like in the last one it said more than and time. So that told you right away that you needed to do addition and you needed to do multiplication. So these ones aren't always going to tell you that. So sometimes you have to read them a couple times to see exactly what they're looking for. But in this case, they want to know how many pages are left over if you've read P pages of a 5-page paper. Okay? So, or 5-page article. So what operation do you think we need to use here? Minus. And so then what would our setup be?
5 minus p.
Yep. 5 minus p. Let's see. 18. Amount you spend if you buy a shirt for $20 and jeans for $J. So any idea what operation we're going to be using on this one?
Addition.
Addition, so how would we set this one up?
20 plus J.
Yep. So we've got 20 plus J. Let's see. Let's look at number 20. This one is the number of hours in M minutes. So with one like this one's written a little funny. Do you remember, like, in elementary school, and they were teaching you how to do conversions from, like inches to feet, feet to yards, and to miles, stuff like that? Do you remember, I don't know, like, if they still do this or not, but my teacher taught us smaller to larger you divide, and then larger to smaller you multiply. Did y'all learn that?
Yes.
Okay. Or you maybe heard something similar to it. I always liked it, and it's funny because still to this day, sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, smaller, larger, divide. Okay, I make a division symbol. Because the whole thing with that is when you start with a small value and you're going to a bigger value, your head and then, like, your body is, like, the division symbol. And then if you have large and you're going to small, you can make, like, the multiplication symbol. So we kind of want to think about this way. The number of hours in M minutes. So how many minutes are in an hour? Yep. 60. So we have 60 minutes in 1 hour. So I'm just going to note that really quick. So I have 60 minutes in 1 hour. But I want to know how many hours are in minutes. Okay, so ideas on what symbol we're going to be using here. Okay. Why do you think multiplication?
I feel like and/or subtraction.
So normally we would have so many minutes in 1 hour, right? So normally we would say we have 60 minutes in 1 hour, okay? But I want hours into minutes. So if I said I have 3 hours, this is going to be a bad example. There's actually a typo in the book. Let me back up. Normally we do minutes into 1 hour. We can also flip this and say that there's 1 hour in 60 minutes. Okay? Those two things, we can flip them and they mean the same thing. Okay? Now, it's a little confusing because they want to know how many hours are in M minutes. And they told us that of was multiplication. However, the book, I actually realized, has a typo. And so trying to get my thoughts together here. If we want to know how many hours are in a minute, right, or how many hours are in the minutes, what we really should have is hours over minutes. Okay? We should really show that there is, see, it's a problem because they're telling you M minutes. They should have said in hours over 60 minutes. Let's modify this a little bit. Let's say the number of because I think this is what they really wanted to say, the number of H hours in 60 minutes. So then, if we had that, then we would have our hours over minutes. And so then that would give it to us, whoops. I probably wouldn't give y'all one like this, but I just wanted to talk about it, and then I failed to talk about it correctly, so just, whatever. So we would have the number of hours in 60 minutes, and then, we could adjust that or whatever as we go, but, number 21, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to give that one to y'all, but it's the number of months in years. Like how many months are in X number of years, basically. And so that one's just going to be a multiplication one. That one would be easy. This one's a little bit weird, so don't stress about one like this. I'm not going to give you one like that that's confusing like this one was. The last thing is the rates here that they give you. So something like number 24, if you have 180 miles over 2 hours, and they want to know it in different units, but if we were going to just reduce this down, how would we reduce it? Like if you wanted to just like reduce the fraction, like ignore the labels that go with it.
Just like
Divide them. Yeah, simplify. So what would that give you? It's half of 180.
90.
Yeah, so it would just be 90, and then we would just do miles per hour, like that. The instructions say to do it in feet per second, which we'll talk about like converting those later, but just I'm probably gonna give you an even one because it's the easiest one on there. The other ones have decimals, so I wouldn't expect you to do those. But I just want you to reduce the fraction down is all I want you to do for that problem. So any questions other than number 20 that I just most definitely completely confused you on? We're good otherwise? Okay. All right, so then let's see, today's Thursday, so these will be due Monday since we don't have class tomorrow, and then we'll probably pick up and do a little bit more with this section then. I'm going to go 3 through 21 odd, and then also I would like you to do number 22 as well. And like I said, this one is just simplify for now. So just simplify it down, and then we'll talk about how to convert it. Probably is what we'll do on Monday. We'll deal with conversion. So